Chapter 14. The Mountain Path. The Iron Axe. Mountains loomed ahead, their jagged peaks shrouded in mist, swallowing the light as the sun dipped below the distant horizon. The path twisted and coiled like an old serpent, weaving through dense forests and steep inclines of bare rock. The further they climbed, the sharper the air became, crisp and thin, laced with the bite of altitude. The group had left Everethil's lush vibrance behind, exchanging its golden hues and whispering trees for the harsh, quiet solitude of the highlands. The towering pines stood watchful, their gnarled roots clinging to the earth like ancient sentinels, as if they, too, sensed the weight of something stirring beneath the stone. Mist clung low to the ground, curling around their boots like restless spirits, reluctant to leave the warmth of the valley below. The world grew eerily silent as they climbed, no birds, no rustling leaves, only the distant howl of the wind, threading through the mountain crags like a lament. Dolo adjusted the straps of his pack, shifting the weight of his supplies, and wiped the sweat from his brow. His spear, once just a weapon, pulsed faintly with mana, a faint hum at the back of his mind, like a song whispered on the wind. The mana was waking, and they weren't the only ones who felt it. Aros trudged beside him, his expression distant, his silver hair stirring in the unseen currents. The mana surrounded him like a living force, responding to his very breath. His small fingers clenched around the fabric of his tunic as though grounding himself. "You've been quiet," Dolo murmured. Aros blinked up at him, his golden eyes unfocused. "I hear something. Ahead, like the mountain is calling." Mako exhaled harshly from behind them. "You're not the only one." Dolo turned toward him. The warrior's knuckles were white on the haft of his axe. The tension in his frame had only grown since leaving the valley, his movements stiff, wary, as though he were listening to something the others couldn't hear. Fennex, padding beside him, twitched an ear. "You're hearing it too, aren't you?" Mako didn't answer. His jaw tightened and he pressed forward. From the rear of the group, Kaelin moved beside Arindra, her gaze flicking between the shifting shadows in the trees. "You've been watching the trees more than the path," Kaelin noted. Arindra's hand brushed the edge of her bow. "They feel restless." Kaelin nodded. "The land remembers things we've long forgotten. I get the sense that whatever's waiting for us ahead, it remembers too." Arindra exhaled. "That's what I'm afraid of." As they ascended, the trees thinned, the path narrowed, forcing them to move single file along a ridge that dropped steeply into the valley below. The cold wind cut sharper now, tugging at their cloaks. Irindra suddenly held up a fist. The group halted instantly. She crouched beside deep grooves scratched into the stone, her fingertips tracing their sharp edges. "Weapon marks," she murmured. "A battle happened here, recently." Mako knelt beside her, running his hand over the stone. The grooves were fresh. "Axes," he said grimly. "Heavy ones." "Axes," Dolo frowned. "Dwarven," Mako muttered, "but I don't know if they were fighting shadows or each other." A sound echoed up the path, the clink of armored footsteps. Dolo gripped his spear. Mako raised his axe. Arindra knocked an arrow. From around the bend, 5 figures emerged. The dwarves moved like stone come to life, their bodies broad and thick with muscle beneath their heavy, soot-streaked armor. Their beards were braided with iron rings, their weapons gleaming with etched runes, and their amber eyes sharp as a smith's chisel. The leader, an imposing figure with a chest like a boulder, raised a hand, his axe resting on one broad shoulder. "Halt! Who travels the mountain path without leave from the Iron Axe clan?" The group froze, tension thick in the air. Waya stepped forward, her voice even. "We mean no harm. We seek the Everwood glade." The dwarves muttered amongst themselves. Their leader's gaze lingered on Aros, his nostrils flaring slightly. "Mana returns," he muttered, his grip tightening on his axe. Dolo frowned. "What do you mean?" The dwarf studied him, then thumped the butt of his axe against the stone. A pulse vibrated beneath their feet, like the mountain itself had a heartbeat. "The earth speaks to us as well, lad." The dwarf narrowed his eyes. "And something old stirs beneath the rock. The shadow's stink has seeped into our minds, poisoning the stone. And now," his gaze flicked to Aros again, "this child appears. This is no coincidence." Aros shrank slightly under the scrutiny. Pip, always one to cut tension, muttered, "Well, that's not ominous at all." The dwarf ignored her and straightened. "I am Tyrion of the Iron Axe clan. If Shadow follows your trail, you'll answer for it. But if you come with truth, you'll find hospitality." Dolo glanced at Waya. She gave a small nod. "We accept," he said. Tyrion grunted. "Then follow. But mind your steps. The mountain holds secrets these days." The gates of Iron Hollow loomed ahead, a fortress carved directly into the mountainside. Towering statues of dwarven warriors flanked the entrance, their axes crossed over their chests, their stone eyes staring into eternity. Tyrion raised his hand, and the runes in the archway pulsed faintly. With a deep groan, the massive stone doors parted, revealing a vast underground city. Glowing mineral veins ran through the walls, casting the cavern in faint blue light. Bridges crisscrossed the chasm, leading to stone dwellings, their doors etched with runes of protection. The marketplace bustled below, but even among the activity, something was wrong. The mana veins running through the rock flickered weakly. Some had dimmed entirely. Arindra ran her hand along a dwarven pillar, fingers tracing blackened fractures. She frowned. "This isn't natural." Tyrion's face darkened. "No, lass. It started months ago. First, just tools breaking, tunnels collapsing. Then, miners began disappearing." That got their attention. "Disappearing how?" Fennex asked. Tyrion's jaw tightened. "No bodies, just their axes left behind, and sometimes—" He lowered his voice. "The stone whispers." Mako stiffened. The earth beneath his feet trembled. Tyrion led them into a great hall, where dwarves gathered around a massive stone table, etched with maps of the mountain's tunnels. The largest among them, a dwarf with silver-streaked braids, stood with arms crossed. Tyrion saluted. "Thane Graldir, these travelers seek no ill." Graldir's piercing gaze swept over them. It lingered on Aros. "Mana touches this child," he said gruffly. "Why?" Aros hesitated. Waya answered. "He was born of the world tree. Mana is awakening through him." Graldir tapped a deep tunnel shaft on the map. "The corruption spreads here. We tried sealing it. The shadows broke the wards." Mako's gut twisted. He had heard it too. Graldir met their eyes. "Tomorrow we descend."